Okay, hello everybody. This is Patricia Love, your life's cheerleader, and we are in the locker. And we're in the locker today with Norman Bell. So I'm really excited to have Norman here today. And I got to tell you a little bit about Norman before we really talk to him, because this guy has got quite the resume, I must say. Norman Bell is an award-winning public speaker, performer, presentation coach, and expert communicator who's used his communication skills to help Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft, which is in Seattle, right? Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard, and AT&T, as well as PPS travel show host Rick Steves, who I love, by the way, too. That's so exciting that you worked with him. Mm-hmm. And as an actor, oh my God, as an actor, he played opposite Academy Award winner Christian Bale in The Machinist. So everybody go check that out, okay? And wrote, co-produced, and starred in the popular solo show Subprime, which is all about the mortgage business. So, and as a speaker coach, Norman has worked with researchers as Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research and social entrepreneurs competing in the Social Venture Partners Fast Pitch. Earlier this year, Norman launched his own business. Congratulations, Norman. Good Speak Consulting, which helps change makers tell their story more effectively so they can make the world a better place. And coming, he's actually has a workshop coming up on September 15th of this coming up month. Oh my God. So keep that date, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But first off, let's welcome Norman Bell. Yay!
Yay, glad to be here, Patricia. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just thrilled that you took the time to kind of talk with me, because at Life's Cheerleader, we're all about changing life's fumbles into touchdowns.
Oh yeah, oh I love it.
I know. So it's just because don't we all have some fumbles? Everybody has fumbles, no matter what they might be, and sometimes we just need to learn to how to get through those fumbles and pick that ball up and keep going, or just know that you can react and we'll just get it the next down. So I want to ask you first a couple questions. First off, what would you say that is your kind of your why for maybe even starting your business, getting through that? Let's just start there. Why you began to start your business? Sure.
So just to boil it down, I feel like that when we tell our stories, we can change the world. It basically comes down to that. And so I have a background in theater and public speaking. And I find that that's kind of a natural talent of mine, but I wanted to serve an audience that I could really feel good about, and so I'm targeting change makers. Now that can be a pretty wide scoped audience. It can be everything from people like yourself, Patricia, coaches, therapists. It could be social entrepreneurs, but really anybody who feels like they're making a positive difference in the world, or who wants to. So I've had a chance to do that already a bit. I've been working. Last night, as a matter of fact, I was doing some work with somebody who's preparing for this Social Venture Partners Fast Pitch, which is sort of like an American Idol for social entrepreneurs. They go through this contest where they have to get this 5-minute pitch down.
Oh, wow.
Precisely. Yeah. And at the end of October, they're on a big stage at McCaw Hall, and they have to do this. The finalists get there anyway, and they have to give this pitch. And so they need to learn how to tell their story. So I found it really inspiring working with a variety of different people and helping them learn how to kind of, you can get so in the weeds of what you're doing that it's hard to know, like, well, what is my story exactly? So that's what I like.
Exactly, because sometimes it's to be so big and so many different things, and we really kind of have to narrow them down, like, well, what is my story? Because sometimes when I look back, it's like, well, I got like 20 different stories.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody has hundreds of stories, right? So it's kind of like, you can start by just collecting stories anyway. A lot of people feel like, well, I don't have any stories to tell. No, but everybody does, right? And
everybody has a story, and they just don't really realize it. Everybody actually, especially as they go on in life, have actually probably picked up that ball and kept going. And sometimes they don't even realize it. And they can also help others too. So tell me what, if you can, maybe a story that you had, I'm sure you've had many, but a story that you had that kind of maybe changed you to want to help others tell their story.
Yeah. So So I think my trajectory or my journey basically was, I'll try to keep it brief, but in high school, my love of public speaking started when I ran for a student class officer position. It was like a senior class officer position at the end of my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like not something that I typically did. I had my friends and everything, but I was pretty low key. And so I decided to run for this, and my slogan was "Hell yes, vote for Norm." And we had these speeches at the end of election week, and I put on this slideshow. And about 3 slides in, the slides started coming up upside down. I could have melted into the ground at that moment, but I went for it. And I remember looking back and seeing the crowd, kind of doing this, like to look at the slides, so I could tell that they were with me, right? So at the end of the speech, I said, "Okay, if you want to vote for me, on the count of 3, yell hell yes." And I said 1, 2, 3, and the whole place went hell yes. And of course, there's something that's kind of powerful about cheap mass gratification from your peers, all
right.
saying, "Yes, we want you."
Right.
That leaves an impression for sure. But I do think there was something about that moment that was valuable. It was like I came out as my fullest self.
Uh-huh.
And my biggest self. And so my senior year was a great year because I'd really expressed myself. And so people knew me that way. And I was just really involved in my community there. So I had a great year there. And then I'd love to say that I graduated from high school and just went on from there. And it was just a straight trajectory upwards. But after that, I really kind of lost myself in college at the University of Washington, and really kind of struggled to find community there. And by the end of my senior year, I started experiencing clinical depression.
Okay.
I really didn't even know what was going on with me at the time, but I just couldn't sleep, and was having trouble eating and so forth.
Right.
So not more than just a sadness, right? It's something that just sticks.
You're just really just like you were just at your wit's end, probably.
Exactly. So I went through this a couple of times in my, or I went through this a few times in my 20s. I really just struggled off and on. I had periods where I was free of it, and then it would get triggered, and I would go through. Usually they would last for several months. So it's kind of a painful thing to go through.
Yes.
And then in my early 30s, I was living abroad. I was living in Barcelona, Spain, which if you've never been to Barcelona, I would highly recommend it.
Yes, I really want to go, by the way. It's one of my bucket lists.
Yes, it should be on everyone's bucket list. And I was living in this neighborhood, and I heard about this Zen dojo that was down the street, and that they were doing meditation classes there. And so I went to try it out, and meditation is sort of in my DNA. My dad had done TM for years when I was a kid. Of course, when I was a kid, I was like, "Dad, what is a TM? What's that?"
Right.
But I, at this time in my life, I was open to it, and so I think that was the beginning of kind of a shift in lifestyle for me. I got into meditation, and then I came home in 2004 and got into different support groups around addiction and codependency. And then, so that's all been really helpful. It's just kind of going through this process of essentially a process of coming home to myself. I came back home to Seattle, and I kind of came back home to my body and to myself.
Right.
It's been sort of a rediscovery.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people go through this and maybe in different ways, but they just don't know how to express it or what to do. Yep. In most cases, it sounds like, I've been in something, similars where not necessarily clinical depression or that, but, we're going through just terrible things and really trying to figure out what do I do next? And I think what you're saying is that, you through meditation, it sounds like, and through some other things, you were able, and I know this wasn't an overnight process. And this is what other people, I always try to tell people out there that, changing the journey is not an overnight process.
No, not at all.
But starting it is critical.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing when you start and you start to learn how to transform your moods in the set. So tell me a little bit more how you went into meditation and you said, and it kind of did this help you move forward then?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that, I've gone, after going through a period where like really every 2 or 3 years I would go through some sort of depression, that I've been depression free for over 12 years now. And so I think it's one thing is just acknowledging that, hey, this is happening. This is something that I need to address. And if you don't, as I didn't for a long time, it will just kind of keep coming, kind of knocking on your door and saying, hey, I need to be addressed here. So that going to the meditation class was sort of a first acknowledgement of like, hey, maybe there's something different I can do here that would help myself.
Let me ask you a question. Is there something you found that triggered the depression a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that going to go through all of that, but yeah. But no, I mean, a lot of it has to do with childhood stuff, unprocessed childhood stuff that, basically when it's not processed, it comes up in different ways, right? Yeah,
and I will agree with you on that because, and that's something that's important to people to understand because a lot of people don't realize that what we have inside of us when we're moving forward has been triggered from our past. At our 5 years old or 6 years old, or things that people said to us or left us alone or whatever might have happened. And I think people don't really realize that they just kind of sit there and go, what's wrong with me? And in reality, if they can take the time and be aware and acknowledge the fact that there maybe is something going on. And then I think through meditation, you start to really understand and maybe kind of go back and go, well, where did this actually come from? Because that was what I went through, a lot of different things. And it's come back up through the childhood because I found that for me, it triggered lots of different things as an adult, as I was, going through stuff and I wondered why I was doing them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you an example from even just yesterday around the topic of triggers, right? So I got this email from somebody that I was, having a pretty good day yesterday, and then I checked my email about 3:00, and there was somebody who sent me an email, and they were angry at me without going into the details of it. It was an upset email related to my business. So it's kind of a first, and I just felt myself just sink, and it felt kind of ashamed and sort of. Like, oh my God, I just did something horribly wrong. And what I did was I sent her an email and I apologized for the misunderstanding. And it really wasn't that big of a deal on the surface level, but it had triggered kind of this old shame on this old, and basically I like to call like one of my big triggers, like the name of it is Mommy's Mad. So basically kind of trigger like, oh no, Mommy's mad. And then I just go kind of catatonic,
I love that. I love that because so many things do cause these little triggers.
Yeah.
And I think that for everyday people listening to this, they need to understand that email, I get those emails or I get something that says something. And I, just like you, I feel the sink inside like, oh my God, what have I done wrong? And it triggers back to something in my past of how to do that. So then how do you kind of move out of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the kind of that, the mindfulness and just awareness around it has really been helpful, is because there's some things that will happen that, on the surface level, so maybe there could have been some other kind of email that came in or some other thing that happens that doesn't trigger that, right? And so there isn't all this energy around it. So I just find when I'm able to just be aware of it, I've had other times where I've been feeling the same way, and I just thought, oh, I'm triggered, and boom, it doesn't happen every time that it snaps me out of it, but I have had some occasions where it's like, oh, I'm triggered. This is like old stuff. This isn't really about what's going on in the moment. It's about old stuff that's been triggered.
Absolutely, Norman. I am so agree with you. It's we constantly are promoting awareness. Awareness of thoughts, awareness of things, surroundings, awareness of things that trigger us to, it puts us back into a depression or puts us back 5 steps. It causes those fumbles.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly talking about, because mindset, I find, and thoughts, it starts getting easier and easier once we are aware of our triggers sometimes, or aware of what's going on. So when I start to feel that happening sometimes, and I know this happens to other people in Life's Cheerleader, that it gets easier to get out of it once we acknowledge it and we're aware of it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a fan of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I read that. I do know that book.
Yes.
And he talks about the pain body. So there's different ways to kind of refer to it, but I think there's, it's kind of that. It's something, there's sort of this entity unto itself inside of all of us that we have that's like old stuff, basically. And when it gets kind of touched on, it gets triggered. I think a lot of our pain comes from that. And so when we acknowledge, when we can be aware of that, acknowledge it, then we can kind of like step out of it and go, oh, whoa, this is something that's not me. It's like this pattern.
Right. Would you kind of say that it really is one of the keys is people really trying to decide to become aware and acknowledge things? Would that be, is that maybe one of the things that they can really start to understand? Because I know a lot of people who are listening to this are like, okay, that's great, Patricia and Norman, but how do I, what's some tips that I can do? What do I do?
Yeah. Well, I think, depending on where you're at, like if you're at a low point, just to me that the two words are, get help. So let's get help from other people, right? You don't have to do this yourself. And I think if you're in a low period, there's a tendency to be isolated. I know I can tend to isolate when I'm depressed or just feeling disconnected. And so it's been really helpful for me to connect with other, different communities of people, support groups. And another thing I do is called co-counseling. It's like peer-to-peer counseling. There's a whole movement of people doing that around the world as well. Mm-hmm. And so just anything you can do, even if it was just, if you can't even bring yourself to go to some meeting or pick up the phone and call Patricia, then, just call in, just Google something like, online support group or, phone support groups and call in. And just, I think hearing other people struggling is helpful, because I think most of us out in the world, all we show is, it's like a Facebook world, right? Like, yay, exactly. My vacation pictures and, what nobody talks about this stuff at work, but everybody's struggling.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, support is huge. I'm constantly trying to say to people that every day, we just need support. We can't do this stuff alone, because I know for myself, and I'm usually pretty social and energetic, but I can find myself when things aren't quite right, isolating myself because I think, oh, it's just myself. I'm all alone. Nobody understands, that whole thing. And in reality, other people need you too. Yeah. So it's not all about you. Other people need to hear from you that you're hurting because they're hurting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's just hard for people to understand that it's really hard to get out of that I'm not alone type of thing.
Right. Yeah. And for me, one other thing that's been helpful around, so there's sort of like dealing with your past stuff. And, a lot of people are like, oh God, I don't even want to go there. Forget it. So,
I know, right?
so maybe you don't go there first, but maybe another area that I found really helpful is to kind of like what lights you up, right? There's that Howard Thurman quote about, discover what lights you up and go out and do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. That's a paraphrase of the quote. But and so around life purpose stuff. So for me, I've started to hone in on public speaking as something that I've really I feel called to do. And so there's a huge community of people at Toastmasters that do that. And I was resistant to doing Toastmasters for a long time. I was like, oh, I don't need that. That's for people who are afraid of public speaking. But it's awesome because, you can go there. I can go there. Maybe somebody out there listening to this doesn't have any interest at all in public speaking, so they need to go find whatever their version is. But for me, I get to go there and geek out on public speaking. So.
It makes you feel good. And when you're in a depression or you're down and whatever, I always tell people, do something that you like. If you like gardening, go garden. If you like to take a walk, go walk. What I do is I flip on the music and start, dancing. It just changes your mindset completely and very quickly. And I'm aware that will do that.
I did just this past few weeks or so. I basically for a while I was telling myself the story like, oh well, my music listening days are sort of behind me. I don't really know what's up, with the current bands and stuff like that. Well, I've just gone back to some of my old favorite bands from back in the day. So I'm kind of having a midlife revival these days. And I was just rocking out to, one of the rock bands I loved when I was 16. It's like, yeah, go for it. Like what brings you alive listening to
it brings you alive, and it makes you feel good. It brings back good times and memories. And I just music for me is like the soul. Mm-hmm. And it changes my whole how I look at things, especially when I'm in a bad mood or something. And either that or I just start looking at my cat. If you've got animals or something like that, they make you laugh. So there's lots of different things out there that can help people change their life around and know that there is hope out there and that they're not alone. And I think that's the key, is letting people know they're not alone. So I have a fun question for you.
Okay.
Well, a couple fun ones, actually. So first off, is there something that you can let the audience know about you, maybe a little secret that maybe we don't always know, that stays in the locker, kind of, sort of, and that it'd be kind of a fun thing that you might want to let people know about you, that's maybe they wouldn't know?
Sure. I mean, there's several little interesting tidbits I could talk about. Some of some of which you already mentioned in the bio there. I was in a movie with Christian Bale. The movie's called The Machinist. It's a psychological thriller. And if you go about 2/3 of the way through that movie, you'll find me in the DMV. I'm the DMV guy that he comes to get some information from. And so I'm in the movie for about a minute or so, but it is a speaking part. And it's funny how this movie has come up, over the years, just people that I've worked with or know even just slightly, will come in one day and be like, hey, guess what movie I watched yesterday? The Machinist. What are you doing in that movie? People are so amazed about how could you get in a movie? So I've always gotten a lot of mileage.
But how did you quickly get into that movie? Did you apply for it, or what?
I was for whatever reason they were filming that movie in Barcelona because I think that the production company that picked it up was based there, and they were looking for local actors who spoke English, and so I auditioned for it. But I think I had a lot less. I'm not sure I would have gotten the part in LA if there was 10,000 people.
There wasn't much competition. Is that what you're trying to say?
I am a talented actor. I'm not saying that, but surely I would have got the part anyway. But
absolutely, you would have. Well, I'm never going to look at the DMV. I'm going to look at it completely differently now when I walk in there.
Yes, exactly. I have a newfound connection there. Yeah.
Awesome. So another fun question is, if you woke up, or you could wake up in the morning and be somebody completely different just for the day, who would that be and what would you do? So
I think that I would be Eckhart Tolle, because he does actually seem like an enlightened human being. I don't think he's just putting it on, Right. He seems to something happened to him. There's a story at the beginning of The Power Now where he was at a really low point, and his I don't know, his ego just kind of exploded or whatever. And every once in a while I was like, I wish that would happen to me. but I'm just a regular guy. But it'd be interesting to just. And what I would do is I would just kind of go through the world, as Eckhart Tolle, because he seems to be less lost in the past and future than most of us, and more effortlessly sort of in the present. Right. And I think we can get there through meditation and so forth, but he seems to be sort of on a different level with that. So it'd be great to see the world through his eyes.
So it's somebody that we can, hope to be, or hope to get close to in that same level at some point, because I know that through meditation, as you talked about, it really makes a difference. And also just being. Yeah. And I found that the more I'm just can be with all this technology and everything going around us, it's so hard to just get caught up.
Oh, easy.
And I just really encourage people constantly to just do absolutely nothing. It's so hard to do at first. Mm-hmm. But once you start doing it, it's amazing.
Yeah. Even 10 minutes a day in the morning helps for me. So it just kind of sets the day. And actually, I do it, people say, oh, I don't have time to meditate. Well, I sometimes do it. I work on the computer sometimes, and just take a 5-minute break, just stare at the computer and do nothing. Just take a break. It really just clears your mind out, because
it clears your mind out and really helps us focus. Mm-hmm. And focusing is so important when we can actually focus on what we're doing and being in the present moment so that we can learn to enjoy our lives, because we all are going to have fumbles in life. We all are. And we just need to learn to how to pick that ball back up and keep running at some point.
Absolutely.
So Norman, tell us how we can get a hold of you. Tell us about your workshop that's coming up on the 15th, because I'm sure there's going to be some people that may be very interested in it. And
Sure.
I want to, certainly, explore that with you. So what is that and how is it and how can we get a hold of you and all that good stuff?
Sure. You can get a hold of me at goodspeakconsulting.com. That would be the place to go. And there's information there about the workshop and also some coaching services around storytelling and public speaking. So I'd be happy to help you with that. And the workshop is it's called a Story Fire Workshop. I'm kind of developing a process to create stories that where you come alive. So it's sort of it kind of includes some of the things we've been talking about. I really think that storytelling is a creative process, even if it's used in business or for your organization. And so we practice some mindfulness at the beginning. We kind of explore some of your old stories, and then we look for authentic moments where you light up when you're talking about them. And then we use those moments as sort of core elements that to create stories. So then we take some of the fundamentals of storytelling, story structure, scenes versus narrative summary, finding the lesson of your story, and you can focus on origin stories, sort of like kind of the question that you asked, Patricia, like why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? Or stories can come in many forms. So I'm pretty excited about it. I've been doing a lot of good research, and there's a lot of great information there. So
awesome. And so that would be for even people because I'm sure there'll be some people on here that because I know I get this all the time, like, well, you're outgoing and you're energetic, Patricia, so you wouldn't, you'd probably do something. Is this something also maybe that people are a little shy that would be an awesome thing to do, I would think?
Oh, I think it could be helpful for anyone. So, and it can be helpful in numerous settings. So it could be if you're giving a presentation or a pitch, but it also could be for networking events or any place where you're kind of talking about you and your business. It could be for internally, and if you work in a company, just it's really an opportunity to show the human side of yourself. So
it's probably just getting comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
When you're either with friends or family, because sometimes even friends and family they're hard to talk to. So sometimes be more comfortable in the side. So that sounds fantastic, and that's September 15th, right?
Yeah.
Is there a time? Obviously, they'll call you, but.
Sure. It's from 7 to 9 at the Verity Credit Union in Northgate. They provide space for the community there to use. So it's a really nice space. I just checked it out yesterday.
Awesome. So September 15th, that sounds exciting. So this is how we can get a hold of Norman. And Norman, I want to thank you so much for coming on In the Locker. Really appreciate it. And everybody needs to go to your website. And you have a newsletter they can sign up for too?
I'm working on that. I will soon.
Okay.
So hopefully by the time they get there. Yeah.
All right. That sounds great. So anyway, everybody go and check out Norman Bell. He's a fascinating person. And I want to thank you again, Norman, for being on In the Locker. And this is Patricia Love, your life's cheerleader. And we will see you next time. Take care, guys. Bye now. Bye, Norman.
Bye.